everybody. It's Monday, May 23rd, and that means it's time for another episode of Nonprofit Conversations. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting. And continuing our 2022 trend of first-time guests, I am really excited today to welcome Brian Loebig of Loebig Inc. And he's going to talk with us today about SEO for nonprofits. Before we go over to Brian to introduce himself and say hello, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global audience, wherever you may be, and thanks for joining us. So let's throw it over to Brian. Brian, say hello to our audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's talk SEO.
Hello, audience. Brian Loebig, happy to be here and share some interesting information on SEO for nonprofits.
That's great. Well, so let's start out with SEO. It's an acronym we've all heard, but maybe not everybody knows what it means, especially since we do have a global audience. They may be speaking a different language. So what is SEO?
SEO is an acronym for search engine optimization. And the easy definition I like to use for that is basically helping websites get on to page one of Google, usually, for their top search terms.
Well, and Google is the place to be. I think it's really the only place. I know there's a couple other browsers out there struggling to survive, but I think it's the Google world. Google's a verb now. So I think we need to accept that.
And so the idea behind that too is that, you know, there is Bing, there's a couple other search engines, there's some global search engines. But, you know, with 90+% of the market for search, you know, if you optimize your website or if you focus on optimizing for Google, you're really optimizing for every major search engine out there.
So that means everybody's going to find you.
Yeah,
pretty much no matter what browser. I know there's a lot of other browsers out there besides Google. I know there's Microsoft has one.
Edge, yeah.
Edge is still, yeah, they're still out there. And then there's I don't know if Ask Jeeves is still around, but
which one?
Ask Jeeves.
Oh yeah, that's a search engine.
Mm-hmm. Is that still out there? Because I know, like, I think Web Crawler's gone. That was one of the first ones. But getting back to SEO though, when we were talking right before the episode, Brian, you had mentioned there's way more to SEO than page optimization searches. So what do you mean by that? What are some of the other layers of SEO?
Well, my thought about SEO is when people think of traditional SEO, they're thinking about how to optimize a website so that the website shows up in Google searches. But there's a lot of other ways, especially for nonprofits, that you can do to get your nonprofit more visible on the internet, not only through your website, but through other online properties as well, actually.
Well, so when you say other online properties, what do you mean?
Well, for example, social media. Social media is not your website, but it's online properties for your organization. And so a lot of nonprofits do a pretty good job on using Facebook. Some do a pretty good job using Instagram as well. There's other social media platforms that are kind of lend itself to searches on the internet. So people are, browsing through their own social media profiles. If you have a presence there, then you're going to show up. Another example besides social media, that's kind of more of an obvious one, would be like local directories. Especially for new or small nonprofits, local directories can actually be more influential than your own website for getting visibility. I can give you a few examples. Like a local directory would be like Yelp, for example. Alignable is an up and coming platform similar to LinkedIn. Yahoo Local, Nextdoor.com is a very local and fast growing national directory for neighborhoods. And you can actually create a nonprofit profile on there. You can create a business profile on Nextdoor.com. And when somebody's asking about volunteer opportunities or they're talking about events, that's your business can show up there, especially really hyper locally.
Really, I never even thought of that. I'm familiar with every single one of those platforms you just mentioned, but I have never thought of those as being part of SEO. So what's a good way? So I know we all know what a hashtag is. We've all heard of them. Is that really the best way to get found on other platforms?
It really depends on the platform. So for Nextdoor, ha- hashtags aren't really a strategy for Nextdoor.com. Nextdoor is about, your local neighbors and friends. And if you look at the kind of comment thread that's happening on Nextdoor, it's like, does anybody know a good, vet, that I can use? Or they're talking about a neighborhood situation and getting feedback on that. A lot of some posts on Nextdoor.com can go really viral quick because local neighbors are really highly engaged in there. So if you're a nonprofit and you're sharing something like an event or something that is free for the community, it can get a lot of traction really quickly. And Nextdoor.com, it's only been a couple of years since Nextdoor allowed businesses to create and claim a profile on that platform. And so one of the things your board members could actually do is, especially if they're in your kind of geographical area where the nonprofit is, they can go on there and recommend and like and mention the nonprofit on Nextdoor.com. It can create some great visibility for the nonprofit.
That is such a great idea and so simple. I did not realize Nextdoor allowed you to create a business profile now, because so many places like here locally in the DC area, like Shepherd's Table, for example, is very much local. And so they could probably share news about events or fundraising or things like that. Or, maybe even for, you had mentioned volunteer opportunities, maybe even recruiting new board members could be a good option for that. So, well, what are some other hidden gems besides Nextdoor that you know of?
So Nextdoor would be like an example of a local directory. Another type of directory online would be like a niche directory, something that's very kind of specific to an industry. Examples would be like Psychology Today. So if the nonprofit is if it's a social services nonprofit and they do counseling or therapy or coaching or work with youth, for example, getting profiles of your staff on the Psychology Today will create amazing visibility. That's one of the few platforms that I recommend. It requires a fee to have a listing for a business on Psychology Today, but because they're so incredibly well indexed across the nation, it's like you can get on page one, your business and your nonprofit, if it's kind of therapy support focused, can get on page one because of your Psychology Today listing quite quickly, like within a week or two. And so one of the things I recommend, if you have a nonprofit that does therapeutic type services, I recommend getting all your staff to have profiles on that platform and really fill out those profiles completely and include the link, to the nonprofit in the staff profiles. You can even we even recommend providing guidance to your staff of how to fill those out and how to kind of word it so that you can benefit from the amazing amount of traffic that you will get from Psychology Today.
Wow. So you're saying amazing amount of traffic. So you have worked with people who have done that and really seen a lot of results?
It's when I work with a therapeutic agency like counseling center or those kind of things. My first life was working in nonprofits, social service nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And I was chief operating officer for some statewide nonprofits in Virginia and Wisconsin. It's one of the things that we actually write it into our proposals for working with therapy practices that your entire staff needs to be on Psychology Today. It's going to be about $25 a month, but every client I've worked with has gotten business calls, leads, and business from that profile shortly after they set it up.
That's amazing. So is it $25 a month for everyone or $25 a month per person?
Per therapist, yeah.
Per therapist. Well, it sounds like it would be worth it though. I mean,
absolutely.
That kind of traction.
Hands down worth it, yeah.
So, and then you mentioned a few minutes ago, making sure everybody fills out the profiles consistently. So what are some suggestions or guidelines you might have in that area?
One of the things I recommend is start with your Google business profile. And I would recommend creating a little spreadsheet on what are all the fields that Google business profile requires you to list your business. So the name, the business, the address, the phone number, a short bio of the organization, a longer description of the organization, the links to the website, social media, like create a spreadsheet of all those different things that Google business profile requires.
Mhm.
and then use that as a template for building out all these other directories. So you don't have to kind of recreate it or think about, what do I need to put into the next, directory. You'll have kind of that foundational information from your Google business profile, and then you can really use that to build out all these other profiles. The key thing about, and one of the reasons to do that is because the idea of NAP consistency. So NAP is a keyword in the SEO world, stands for name, address, and phone number.
Oh,
It really goes beyond that, but it's the idea that the more consistent your business is online with its information, the more visibility, the more authority, the more trust Google, the internet, Google, and these other platforms will have that this is your business, this is where it's located. We even go down to the way you type out the phone number. Like if you use dashes or periods, we recommend being that specific, hyper specific with how you do the information, how you complete those directories.
that's really interesting because I think I'm like a lot of people when I fill these things out, I'm not necessarily doing it exactly the same way every time. My address tends to be the same because Google remembers it and it just plops it in there. But then there's some websites, they want to change it to the US mail version, their accepted version. So I just let it do that. But does it really undermine your trust factor? Like, let's say if you don't spell out street every time, or sometimes you do spell out street. I mean,
It doesn't undermine it, but it does enhance it. So it's not
okay.
going to be a negative ranking factor, but it is a positive ranking factor if you create as much consistency as possible. One of the services my company provides for businesses, like when businesses go to a new location or they acquire another business, there's quite a bit of online directory cleanup that needs to happen so that their online listings are consistent, that the old address doesn't show up in Apple Maps. I'm dealing with a brewery actually right now in Gaithersburg, where the Apple Maps listing is pointing to the Google Maps listing points to the correct location, but the Apple Maps listing takes people to the UPS store. And
Oh
so,
my gosh.
and so literally people are going there and asking UPS, where's the brewery? It's supposed to be right here.
I just have to say, I think Apple struggles. I think they have struggled from the beginning with their map app. So hopefully they will be able to figure that out in the future. That is so fascinating though. So you've mentioned a lot of good tips today, everything from creating an Excel spreadsheet with the information you want on every site to signing up for things like Psychology Today. But let's say you're a small staff nonprofit and you want to find these things and you want to try to find them on your own. What's a good way to start looking for places to spread the word about your organization?
I would really, for a nonprofit, I would really leverage those board members,
Mhm.
because it's their mission, their purpose to really support the growth and the success of the nonprofit. And so I would put that on the every board meeting agenda, how you can help and how you can help spread the word or get information about the organization out there. One of the 22 SEO strategies that we're really focusing on this year is sponsorships, and nonprofits they have it built into their DNA about the idea of sponsoring, events, sponsoring the gala, the annual gala, and businesses can actually benefit by sponsoring them, especially board members who are with businesses. It can actually benefit the business as well as the nonprofit by having the board members' business sponsor the nonprofit and then put a link on the business's webpage that links back to the nonprofit. That will create some amazing trust signals to the nonprofit's website so that they can show up more strongly in searches. And it's a no fee kind of thing. It's a no cost to the business to list that, that we're a sponsor of this nonprofit, of their gala event or whatever.
Wow, that is another great idea because we don't think about the way that all these pieces of information connect across the internet. I know, like, I love to use Google. I just type in a question. I got that advice from a colleague in the profession, Cynthia Demore, years ago. Gave me that tip. She said, just type in a question as if you're asking a friend, and this information will pop up. And it's interesting, like, even if you just type in your own name, how many things come up and you find things you totally forgot about. So, but as we're nearing the end of our episode, Brian, first of all, I want to thank you so much for coming today and sharing all these great tips for nonprofit organizations. And when we get to the end of the episode, we like to ask our guests, what's the one thought you would like the audience to take away today or tip in this situation? And how could they get in touch with you if they wanted to learn more?
Probably the one major tip is probably the last one I mentioned is really engage your board members in those opportunities to sponsor the organization and think about that from a digital perspective. Like share that information. Board members can do an amazing amount of support for an organization by sharing the social media posts of the organization, especially when there's key events or they're looking for volunteers or they have an annual gala coming up. Having the board members share that information on their own social media profiles can be huge. And then using the opportunity to build strong digital relationships by linking the board member business websites to the nonprofit that they're supporting in. That is a huge ranking factor and a major missed opportunity for many nonprofits, actually.
Wow.
The way people can connect with me, I always like to, I'm on every major social media. If you look for Brian Loebig, there's only one other Brian Loebig in the country on the West Coast. But so if you Google my name, you can show up there. But I like to send people to my about.me page. Have you heard of that website?
No, I have not.
That's a personal branding SEO kind of thing that I recommend for businesses. It's a free website. It's called about.me. And then my profile is about.me/Brian Loebig, BrianLoebig. And it's a great little free personal branding website. It's a one page. It's kind of like a big featured image of yourself. I recommend that all nonprofit leaders create one of those because it's free. It creates online visibility. And then when you go on there, the reason I send people to that web page is that it's linked to all my social media. So if somebody wants to connect me on LinkedIn, the button's there. If they want to see my business website, they go there. If they want to see my personal Instagram profile, it's all theirs. They can just click buttons and connect with me that way.
It's amazing. So is that site open globally? Like, could somebody in another country enter a page there?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, I've never even heard it's about.me, correct?
About.me. Instead of .com is .me.
.me. I'm probably like many of people in our audience going to run off and check that out immediately after the episode. That's a great tip. Thank you so much, Brian. So we have to go rogue for now. Thank you all for joining us this week. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on whichever platform you prefer. We're on almost all of them now. You don't want to miss another exciting episode. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization, check out our website at roguetulips.com. If you're looking for education and support for earning the CAE designation, check out our education program, the 501c League, at the 501cleague.net. Thanks again, everyone. And on behalf of myself and Brian, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next time.